are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it.
US President Donald Trump and Elon Musk both claimed that a genocide is underway in South Africa.
The Great Afrikaner Refugee Experiment. Are they loving America or missing the bray? What is really going on with the white Afrikaner refugees in America? Are they living the dream or quietly missing South Africa? For a brief but very loud moment, America was told it had a new refugee crisis on its hands. Not from war zones bombed into dust. Not from famine. Not from collapsed states. No, this time, the internet was instructed to panic over white Afrikaners from South Africa who were allegedly fleeing for their lives and needed urgent American salvation. Cable news cried. Commentators ranted. Social media warriors warmed up their keyboards. We were warned of a coming genocide, of white farmers being hunted, of civilization collapsing somewhere at the southern tip of Africa. And then they arrived. No explosions. No chaos. Just suitcases, accents, expectations, and the cold, unforgiving reality of America. So now the question people are whispering but not asking too loudly is this. Are these so-called Afrikaner refugees actually enjoying America? Or are they secretly wishing they never left South Africa at all? Let's talk about it. Does this refugee story not sound a little too convenient? From the beginning, this story felt theatrical. The narrative was clean and dramatic. White South Africans under siege, abandoned by their government, escaping racial persecution.
I'm about to sign some very important executive orders of our new administration.
In February 2025, Donald Trump signed an executive
a picture of all of them with their children
and their flag.
And their flag. When you saw that, what was your reaction?
My reaction, honestly, why so little? Why only 49?
Oh.
Yeah, that was my reaction.
Okay.
Because a plane can fit more than 49 people, can't it?
Okay.
Why so little?
That nobody bothered to slow down and ask uncomfortable questions. Questions like, why now? Why America? Why were some of these refugees able to afford international relocation so easily? And why did this crisis suddenly disappear from the news the moment they arrived? Because here's the truth. Real refugee stories don't get forgotten this fast. What happened instead was a media sugar rush, intense outrage, dramatic headlines, emotional language followed by complete silence once the cameras moved on. And that silence is where the real story begins. Expectation versus reality. America did not roll out the red carpet. Many Afrikaners arrived in the U.S. with expectations shaped by ideology, not experience.
Whom they say
America
are victims of
was
unjust racial
imagined as
discrimination.
safe,
The administration
familiar.
claims Afrikaners are being discriminated against because of their race after South African President Cyril Ramaphosa signed a law this year allowing for private land to be seized by the government without compensation. It's known as expropriation without compensation. The law was drafted and signed as a means of addressing the country's land ownership disparity, where Black South Africans, who make up 80% of the population, own less than 10% of all privately held land. The disparity, a result of apartheid-era policies. Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller spoke to reporters Friday.
What's happening in South Africa fits the textbook definition of why the refugee program was created. This is persecution based on a protected characteristic, in this case, race. So this is race-based persecution.
Prosperous, politically sympathetic. What they actually encountered was a rental market that does background checks like FBI investigations, health insurance systems that feel like a practical joke, a job market that does not care what you used to be back home. This was the first shock. America does not welcome newcomers with emotional reassurance. It welcomes them with forms, fees, and deadlines. And if you miss one, oh well, next appointment is in 6 months. Some Afrikaners reportedly underestimated just how brutal American cost of living truly is. Back home, many had domestic help, extended family support, affordable food, and familiar systems. In America, everything costs money, and silence costs extra. Suddenly, South Africa didn't seem quite as unbearable as advertised. The second shock: whiteness is not a golden passport. Here's where the gossip gets uncomfortable. Some Afrikaners came assuming that racial similarity would translate into instant belonging. After all, America is a majority white country, right?
Wrong.
America's whiteness is tiered, and newcomers start at the bottom, especially if they have accents, foreign credentials, and no generational safety net. Being white in America does not protect you from being underpaid, being ignored, being disposable. Many discovered that American conservatives loved them as a concept, but not necessarily as neighbors, co-workers, or long-term responsibilities. Support vanished the moment symbolic usefulness expired. Turns out being a talking point is not the same as being supported. Black Americans were not impressed, and that hurt some feelings. This part really deserves attention. Some Afrikaners expected sympathy from Black Americans. Instead, what they often encountered was skepticism, curiosity, and sometimes blunt indifference. Because Black Americans have heard the story before, just with different characters. Claims of targeted crime, fear-based narratives, cultural loss, government hostility, all very familiar. The difference? Black Americans lived through these realities without evacuation campaigns, without global outrage, and without anyone calling them refugees. So when Afrikaners described fear and displacement, the response wasn't cruelty, it was perspective. And perspective can feel like mockery if you were expecting applause. America's racial climate was not the escape they expected. Another rude awakening. America is exhausted. Racial tension here is constant, commercialized, and unavoidable. Everything is political. Everything is racialized. Every conversation feels like it's one bad sentence away from a Twitter storm. Some Afrikaners reportedly found American race discussions overwhelming. Why is slavery still discussed? Why are people angry generations later? Why is race always the topic? Because America doesn't bury its trauma, it monetizes it. South Africa's racial pain is raw and visible. America's is institutional and invisible until it suddenly explodes in protests, policy fights, and viral videos. For people who left South Africa to escape racial anxiety, America often felt like jumping from the frying pan straight into a televised courtroom drama. The loneliness no one warned them about. Here's something rarely discussed. America is isolating. There is no built-in community, no automatic village, no aunties knocking without notice, no neighbors checking in unless there's an HOA violation. Many Afrikaners underestimated how emotionally cold American life can feel. People are polite but distant, friendly but unavailable. Everyone is busy surviving, and nostalgia doesn't announce itself loudly. It creeps in quietly. Missing familiar food. Missing humor that doesn't need explanation. Missing being understood without translating yourself. That's when Google searches start appearing. Property for sale in South Africa. Cost of living Cape Town. Is it crazy to move back? The uncomfortable truth. This was never only about safety. Let's be honest, and this is where the mockery earns its paycheck. For some Afrikaners, leaving South Africa wasn't about imminent danger. It was about loss of dominance, loss of certainty, and loss of comfort. Not persecution, but adjustment. Not genocide, but a changing social order. America was supposed to restore a sense of importance, a feeling of being centered again. Instead, it handed them immigrant status and told them to wait their turn. And humility is a shock when you weren't expecting it. So, are they going back?
Some already have.
Quietly. No headlines. No announcements. No hashtags. Others are staying, but with tempered expectations and far less enthusiasm than when they arrived. And some are simply stuck financially, emotionally, and ideologically trying to make peace with a decision that didn't turn out the way social media promised. Because moving countries based on political hysteria is rarely sustainable. Now, here is the final irony. America did what it always does. America didn't save anyone. It didn't destroy anyone either. It simply did what it does best: strip illusions and hand you reality. The Afrikaner refugee moment revealed something uncomfortable, not about South Africa alone, but about how migration narratives are manipulated, sold, and abandoned once they stop being useful. And now the dust has settled. No outrage, no updates. Just people quietly figuring out whether this was fear or fantasy. And let me be clear, this isn't about celebrating anyone's struggle or mocking human suffering. It's about questioning the stories we're sold, the panic we're fed, and the political theater that turns real people into headlines and then forgets them. Because when the cameras leave, when the outrage cools, and when the hashtags stop trending, what's left is reality: bills, loneliness, culture shock, and hard questions no news segment ever answers. So the real question isn't whether these Afrikaner refugees are enjoying America or dreaming of going back to South Africa. The real question is, who benefited from the story being told the way it was? Now I want to hear from you. Do you think this was a genuine refugee crisis or a media-manufactured panic? Do you think America was ever the solution or just another illusion? And if you were in their shoes, would you stay or would you go back? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them and I respond. If you enjoyed this kind of unfiltered commentary like this video, share it with someone who loves uncomfortable conversations, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives that question the narrative instead of swallowing it whole. Support the channel, support independent thinking, and I'll see you in the next one.